Hey guys, what's up? And today I'm going to do a review of my favorite album of 2016, and that is uh, David Bowie's Blackstar. So instead of doing another Eminem album review, I decided to take a break and review albums individually for a while. And I wrote a script for this album review because it's so hard to talk about this album. So, David Bowie, rest in peace. It's been almost 2.5 years, or more like 2 years and about 3 months after he had passed away, and still to this day, he's one of the most innovative and influential trailblazers of the music industry. And wow, this is his 27th studio album. He had been making music since the 60s, and for almost every year he dropped an album. Even though there's a 10-year hiatus between 2003's Heathens and 2013's The Next Day, David Bowie was still grinding music. In the 70s, he had an array of great albums such as Space Oddity, Hunky Dory, and of course the classic, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Yeah, the title. That's the title. And then in the 80s, there's Low. And then we went kind of downhill. Until the year 2016, he had proven us that his music hadn't completely died out. So David Bowie so carefully and artistically crafted 7 tracks for his final album, which was released just 2 days before his passing. And that's one of the reasons why this album is the darkest and probably the most chilling album of David Bowie. Also, this is the only David Bowie album with Bowie's face not on its cover, which is really odd and strange. And ironically, this is the album where David Bowie reveals the truest words and thoughts of himself after he had embraced the fact that he's dying and he's broken. This album is a very special album for David Bowie because he was in a really different place when he was writing and recording for the album. And when this is released, he had already battled cancer for 18 months. But music-wise, it's a brilliant album. It's very self-aware, too. But in a way, David Bowie knows when and when not to fuse his old glamorous musical style into the new music presented on this album. And the music on this album is claimed to be influenced by Death Grips and Kendrick Lamar, which are two of the best artists of the 2010s, admittedly. But the influence is very subtle on this album. On this album, we have these lively and organic instrumentals, including drums, guitars, and flutes, packed in a very specific boundary, while David Bowie created beauty and chaos. And it is, in a way, controlled creative madness, which is something really impressive about this album. So these 7 tracks are not sung by Ziggy Stardust, nor Thin White Duke, nor Aladdin Sane, nor any other characters he had played, but the man himself. The first track, also the title track, Blackstar, is one of the best songs of the decade, and probably the best of 2016.
On the day of execution, on the day of execution, only women kneel and smile.
It has these ominous, eerie, freaky, Halloween-flavored guitars and flutes, creating an unsettling and sour atmosphere. Then David Bowie goes in with his raspy and almost possessed vocals, "In the villa of all men," with these cryptic lyrics of how women kneel and smile and how there's a solitary candle. And then the pattern breaks and it goes into a very spacey ambient section where Bowie goes, ooh. It almost feels like a religious hymn or a chant. Then some sweet bittersweet and fantasizing strings kick in with the simple sequenced drum beats. Something happened on the day he died. And then the freaky, jazzy saxophones get into the mix where Bowie declares, I'm not a pop star, I'm not a film star, I'm not a Marvel star, I'm not a porn star. And of course, David Bowie also claims that I'm a black star. And that line is more relevant than it ever is after his passing away.
I'm a black star. I'm a black star. Something happened on the day he died. Spirit rose a meter, then stepped aside. Somebody else took his place and bravely cried.
And it's super sweet but strange at the same time. And it makes the song so theatrical and cinematic. And maybe that's what David Bowie meant when he said he's also influenced by Kendrick Lamar, with the saxophones and the drums that goes really jazzy and psychedelic and dreamy. And at the end, the song returns to the original freaky guitar flute Villa of Ormond session, which is really smart. The way he turned death into an art form is truly, purely brilliant. And the music video is one of the best of the decade. It's really freakish and artistic. We also see a shot of an astronaut with a skull in the helmet, assumably a dead Major Tom, and it throws all the way back to Space Oddity from the 60s, also my favorite Bowie song. Major Tom was on a very dangerous mission on that track, and now it's all come to a full circle now that we see his corpse in this weird, almost paradise-like place. The next track is where Bowie started to wander around and talk about other ups and downs in his life that makes him question more about his life and death. But it's also more of a metaphor, to be honest. "'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore" is a very light-hearted and upbeat track. Also a very jazzy, fun, dreamy, and milky smooth track. And this track is more like a metaphor, again, because it has the same title as a play. Man, she punched me like a dude.
That was patrol. This is the war. 'Tis a pity she was a
The lyrics remain freaky and cryptic, and the song structure is also super weird, just like the title track. Elements of avant-garde and jazz are mixed together really well, and it's such a good tune overall. This song also gives David Bowie a chance to sing with such a rich personality. It makes him look guilty and sinful, and it's as raw and realistic as it gets. And the song ended with a dramatic crescendo with these horns wailing and bleeding, and instrumentals bleeding into one another. And the lyrics are also oddly vulgar and disgusting, and that's part of the appeal and the aesthetic of the track, and I really enjoy it overall. The third track, Lazarus, is one of the saddest and most painful songs from David Bowie.
this way or no way. You know I'll be free. Just like that bluebird. Now ain't that just like me?
Even more painful when we dive deep into the lyrics and we hear him blaming himself for his mistakes and ramble about his death. It has some downtrodden guitars and weepy saxophone decorations. It creates a cold and sorrowful atmosphere, and it also feels so helpless, as David Bowie's vocals on this track is so devastating. Same for the lyrics as well. And the music video, oh my gosh, it's full of shame and guilt, and it's such a painful music video to watch. Same for the music video of Blackstar, which is one of my favorite music videos of the 2010s again. And the bandage wrapped on Bowie's head with the black buttons imitating his eyes is such a smart and artistic look. And the lyrics are really ominous and dark. Look up here, man, I'm in danger. And David Bowie also talked about how he used up all his money when he got to New York and how he dropped his cell phone down below. It sounds like him talking after he had passed away beyond the grave. And that adds onto the guilt and shame of the song. The fourth track is Sue, or In a Season of Crime. And it's even more unorthodox and eccentric with its repetitive guitar strikes and the very swoony vocals. It was a bit redundant at first, but later on the song features some groovy ascending guitars that I really dig, and the guitar riff of this song also reminds me of Swans because it's vulgar and impulsive. And the lyrics and the concept of the song is also somehow connected back to the second track, 'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore, and it also enriches David Bowie's storytelling on this album. However, it's not as sharp and as memorable as other tracks on the album. It's a bit more mild and underwhelming. Just a bit though, it's still a great track. And James Murphy of LCD Sound System somehow did the drums for this track and the next, which is really odd, but that's also really genius. And again, the lyrics, they are very vulgar, and they remind me of lyrics from Lulu, which is the Lou Reed and Metallica collaboration project, which David Bowie has cited that he loves the album as well. The fifth track is Girl Loves Me, and it's even more eccentric and experimental because it's much more drier and plainer, but at the same time it's also a really brilliant song. It features this very subtle ambient sound in the background, which is something that sounds like to me. I don't know if it's true or not, while this clumsy beat plays in the front. And the lyrics are again really odd. Girl loves me, girl loves me. And I also like how sturdy and snappy the beats are on this track. It adds onto the freakiness of this track. And on this track, we see David Bowie embracing the weirdness and the brokenness of his vocals. He used his vocals to create cracked vocals on this track, which complements the music really well. He also used his shaky vocals for the second track on the album as well. And David Bowie is also portrayed as a person who's losing time, losing faith, losing sanity on this track. And the penultimate track, Dollar Days, is a more quiet and moody folk ballad with the beautifully depressing pianos, and the lyrics embark on Bowie's regrets.
Cash girl, suffer me, I've got no enemies, I'm walking down. It's nothing to me, it's nothing to see.
And the line, I'm dying to, pushed their backs against the grain, is so ironic after Bowie had passed away, but also it might be intentional. The final track, the final official track from a full-length studio album from David Bowie ever in history, is I Can't Give Everything Away.
With skull designs upon my shoes, I can't give everything. Everything.
It's like Bowie had been anticipating for his death for years already, and it's creepy in a sense. However, this final track is way more smooth and uplifting for some reason, and it's also very spiritually mature because we realize that this is the finale, this is the ultimatum, but David Bowie is telling us that it's okay, and it almost feels like he's actually saying it's okay, and that's why this song is strangely calm and peaceful. It's because the sense of finality is so strong, it's already declared to be a part of the nature of the universe. And that's really fucking beautiful. Although the synths and the harmonicas on this track feels a bit drab and dated, it's still a brilliant decoration for the track. Bowie kind of repeats the same refrain over and over again, which is basically the title of the track. David Bowie is really at his most dreary and tortured. He, in here, talks about how he had to part away from life and how he couldn't give any more. He's drained. Overall, this album is really surreal and twisted, freakish and artistic. And the way David Bowie plays with the intricate instrumentations and textures and flavors on this album makes it so versatile, and that's really, really impressive. But with the context, it's such a deep and strange and thought-provoking album, and with all the small details of this album, the listening experience is even more ominous and dark. This album allows every listener to vicariously touch death and learn about death through the eyes of the person who's dying himself, and every moment on the album feels very essential and important, especially when the context comes into play, and this album just makes his death even more powerful, more jaw-dropping, more awe-inspiring, more impactful, and the impact is everlasting. So, the worst is Sue or In a Season of Crime, which is a hard pick, to be honest, and the best is the title track. I'm giving David Bowie's Blackstar a 9 out of 10. So, have you listened to David Bowie's Blackstar? From 1 to 10, how much would you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more.